Welcome to Telegeography Explains the Internet, the show that explores the business behind all of the ways humans stay connected around the world. I'm your host, Greg Bryan, and my guest today is Tiago Rodrigues, CEO of the Wireless Broadband Alliance. Tiago has deep experience in the Wi-Fi space, and in this episode, he outlines for us the key issues that are current in the wireless LAN. As you will hear, the WBA has published a 2024 guide to the important trends carriers and enterprises should be on top of for all things wireless at the office, campus, and even home. We talk about Wi-Fi 6, 6E, and 7, and why each of these are important developments in the Wi-Fi space. OpenRoaming that allows you to seamlessly connect across different Wi-Fi networks, and how Wi-Fi can play a role in emerging solutions such as network as a service. We also get into the digital divide and the role that municipal Wi-Fi and other solutions can play in closing that gap, and how to best use the limited resource of spectrum to ensure connectivity in our increasingly digital world. We also realized during the show that Tiago and I are both cyclists, so we have a little aside nerding out about bikes and professional cycling, but it's very brief if that's not your thing. But I had a great time in this episode, and I learned a lot. I'm sure you will too. Okay, welcome to the show, Tiago.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. A pleasure to be here today with you and looking forward for the show.
Yeah, likewise to me. As I've mentioned to you when we were leading up to this interview, we at Telegeography and my podcast here focus a lot on the long haul, on the network portion of telecoms, and I don't very often get to talk about what we're going to be focused on today: the LAN, the campus, the office. So I'm really excited to learn a lot, and happy to have you on the show. Before we jump into all of that, Tiago, I wonder if you could give us a brief background on yourself, and then how you became to be the CEO of the Wireless Broadband Alliance.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. By the way, there is wonderful news about Wi-Fi coming out from CES. Maybe we can somehow during this conversation talk about that. So, by the way, I'm based in Portugal. I was born in Portugal, in Lisbon. I spent majority of my life here. I worked many years for Portugal Telecom Group. I managed the different areas, but where I took more responsibilities was on the Wi-Fi business unit.
Right.
And that's where I came across Wireless Broadband Alliance, like many other organizations across the world. And I have that capability that when I jump into do something, I really want to get involved and put my hands on. And suddenly, when I was appointed to this organization representing the carrier, I started to work pretty hard on the organization. And when I realized they were inviting me to join the group, that I did probably 12 years ago. And then 6 years ago, they invite me to become the CEO. And that's where I come up CEO of the organization.
Yeah, excellent. So with that in mind too, maybe a little background on what the WBA is, what its goals and purposes are, and of course, who your constituent members are.
Yeah. So WBA was founded by a group of service providers. In fact, they wanted to do roaming between Wi-Fi networks. So we are talking about 20 years ago when we started to see the first Wi-Fi hotspots coming up across the world. And immediately we start to realize, how cool it could be that, I don't know, I'm in Portugal, I just go to US or I go to France or Japan, and I can use my own ID and connect to a different network. And that was somehow the kickoff of the organization. And we evolved a lot since then. But if I can summarize in one sentence, our goal is to improve the Wi-Fi experience, both for enterprises, consumers, municipalities, all that. And we are a mix. We are a very unique organization because we have a very transversal membership. So we have large carriers like AT&T, Comcast, Telefonica, Orange France, and others. Then we have all the big manufacturers, let's say Cisco, Nokia, Apple, Samsung, HP, Aruba, and others. But then we have as well enterprise brands. So
Mm-hmm.
Home Depot, Marriott
Mm-hmm.
Hotels, GM. So companies that have their own connectivity and wireless connectivity strategies, and as you know, they invest a lot on these technologies to
Mm-hmm.
provide their services. And I'm super happy to see them getting involved on these standards organizations like the Wireless Broadband Alliance, because for me it makes sense, because they are one of the biggest investors and they dedicate money and resources to improve their connectivity, their systems, their platforms. So definitely they should have a say on the evolution of the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting point because if you're the type of enterprise that is providing connectivity to thousands, tens of thousands of customers on a daily basis, really you've become a kind of service provider of sorts, whether you wanted to or not, right?
No doubt about it. And sometimes we have examples of large enterprises that probably they manage as much traffic as some mid-size or mid-tier size service providers, because they have
Absolutely.
so many sites, so many venues, so many offices around the world. They serve so many customers that sometimes is, yeah, it's like a mid-sized service provider.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so Tiago, if we jump into the meat of this here, as I mentioned at the start, I don't have the opportunity to focus much on the land. So the way that I dove into this was by reading the WBA's 2024 industry report. So I thought maybe let's start there. If you could tell us just a broad overview of what that is and where folks can find it. I think rather than leaving that for the end of the show,
Yeah.
it's good to put it up here so that people can know the basis that we're working from.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm super glad that you saw that report interesting, and that situation generate this conversation and
Yeah.
this podcast. That's awesome. So basically, anyone can find the industry report from the Wireless Broadband Alliance on our website. So it's wballiance.com. You just go there, look for industry report. You can download it. Uh, this is a piece of research that we do every year. So it's done by some independent consultants that we hire. They do the research for us. We do as well a quite exhaustive survey to the
Mm-hmm.
industry where we collect feedback from service providers, manufacturers, enterprises about the technology. And we try to do a snapshot of the situation of the Wi-Fi industry, and as well what we should expect from the Wi-Fi industry for the next years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's the main goal of that industry report.
And it's perfect to be recording this here in the start of the year, early January 24. I end up doing very similar things for the wide area network, right? Where I come
Yeah.
up with a list of here's the key things going on right now, what I expect to see this year. So I enjoyed kind of piecing that together on the other end, if you will, of the equipment. In particular, I like that in the report you had kind of 8 key issues that you see as driving Wi-Fi's success and adoption over the next year. Maybe you could take us through those 8 issues
Yeah.
and why you think they're important.
Yeah. Yeah, those 8 issues are a personal view on where I see, not only for the Wi-Fi, but in general, where the demand for broadband connectivity is coming from.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it's a key element for the Wi-Fi in general, but it goes beyond Wi-Fi. It goes for broadband connectivity
Right.
of any type. Um, I think I can divide it in two broad areas. One, it's all about digitalization of the societies. This includes enterprises, the way that they work, the way that they perform manufacturing, the way that they do maintenance, the way that they communicate. It's changing a lot. AI, robotics, it's changing a lot that enterprise environment. Another big trend that somehow it is following the pandemic learnings that we all got. It's all about how do we work, are the way that we workforce interacts, how can we find that work-life balance between going to the office, stay at home, managing remote teams. That's a huge force that we see happening.
And for our world, it means that the network has to be everywhere all the time, right?
Correct. Yeah. So we need connectivity all the time, and it's not only connectivity. We need good connectivity or powerful connectivity. It's not anymore, okay, I'm here sending an email or I'm browsing on the internet something. If I need to wait 3 more seconds, I'm fine. But when you start working from home, like us, we are recording this podcast, so we want super good broadband. We are probably both of us using fiber and Wi-Fi, and we want to maintain connected. So that dynamics coming from the pandemic on the workforce dynamics, then education, for me, it's another big trend that is happening, and entertainment, and as well online shopping. I think online shopping has been around for quite some time already.
Sure.
But I think the pandemic just accelerated, and will be interesting to see. And if someone can share that with me on LinkedIn or something, I would love to see it. Latest statistics on the evolution of the online shopping after the pandemic. That will be
no
awesome.
doubt about it. I think that sort of just, and again, I don't have data on this, but anecdotally, certainly that trend toward doing things like grocery delivery or takeaway delivery, right? That never went back to pre-pandemic levels, and probably never will, right? So
correct. I don't know. We have all these services like Uber Eats, at least here in Europe, is super famous now. Every street there is people always passing by with all that. So I think
on the mopeds, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So I think there is this big bucket of all this digital transformation that at the end of the day, it requires connectivity, it requires broadband connectivity, and requires good connectivity. So that is a big trend. The other trend is Wi-Fi and 5G and even satellite technologies. They have been evolving a lot to provide capacity to this demand of digitalization. And I will speak more about the Wi-Fi more than anything, because that's my area of expertise. We saw a strong improvement on the capability, on the technical capabilities of the Wi-Fi over the last 4 years. If we go a little bit back here in history, so the Wi-Fi normally was having a new standard every 4 to 5 years. So let's imagine I have Wi-Fi 2, then I have Wi-Fi 3, and then another 4 or 5 years I have Wi-Fi 4, and then another 4 or 5 years I have Wi-Fi 5. But over the last 4 years, since 2018, 2019, we got Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 6E, and Wi-Fi 7. So almost we had 3 versions of the standard in just 4 years. What is a huge advance, but I think it's super positive because it's bringing super interesting capabilities to the consumers and to the enterprises and to everyone that needs broadband connectivity. And not only the standards have been super relevant, but even very simple features like, for example, for our houses. So the ability that I can buy now these Wi-Fi pods or Wi-Fi mesh pods that is very easily without any technological knowledge. I
Plug
can
and
buy
play.
something, plug and play, and suddenly I have my full house with coverage, super reliable and super easy to set up. So those small advances have been somehow helping a lot all those digitalization that we talked about.
Yeah, and that's exactly one of the things going through the report that I really wanted to sort of get the bigger picture from you on in this interview is that as consumers, everyone was kind of aware of, we went to 3G and then 4G LTE and 5G, and to the consumer, 5G mostly just meant more bandwidth. Although we know in our business it meant all kinds of things like network slicing and whatnot. But a lot of consumers don't really pay much attention to what Wi-Fi version their network on. Even in the office, even among sort of IT people, they might be, okay, well, I have this broadband service now. I need this Wi-Fi box. Can you take us through sort of exactly what Wi-Fi 6, 6E, and 7 mean and why they might be important? Particularly, I would focus on the enterprise side in my question, I think, but certainly consumer is relevant as well.
Yeah, let's do a deep dive on that. For me, the biggest change that is happening is coming up with Wi-Fi 6E and with Wi-Fi 7 because we are using more spectrum. So until Wi-Fi 6 and including Wi-Fi 6, we could only use the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum and the 5 gigahertz spectrum for Wi-Fi. So those
Which
are
is
the
why you had to
bands.
get a cordless phone if someone still has a landline that didn't enter. Yeah, I remember those days. They're long gone for me, but
correct.
Yeah.
So that's the spectrum that was allocated to Wi-Fi across the world, and sometimes, special for the enterprise environment, it could be quite challenging because this spectrum has a limit, and Wi-Fi is super crowded already. As we all know, is a super successful technology. In some situations, we could have challenges in terms of optimizing the use of that spectrum to be able to deliver whatever services we want to deliver, especially if we are. Let's imagine you are in Times Square, New York City. You have your, I don't know, your hotel or your retail shop or even your office, and suddenly you see more than 50 networks on your device.
Right.
So all these Wi-Fi networks interfering with each other. And there is a limit of the number of channels that you can create on that spectrum to minimize those interferences. When we enter into the Wi-Fi 6E and Wi-Fi 7, suddenly we have one more band, that is the 6 gigahertz band. So let's imagine we have two highways already full of cars, and suddenly we have a brand new highway with no cars at all. So we can start play around with it. And I think that will make a huge change in very dense environments, like I said, an airport or a stadium or even a shopping mall or a manufacturing campus where we have tons of different networks available, or even one university campus. So I think that will give a huge improvement. So that's, for me, is number one.
And if I could ask one thing on that, did that new spectrum come available as a result of governments sort of rethinking their spectrum policy, or as Wi-Fi technology just changing to utilize a different area?
Yeah, was government allocation. So I'm proud to say that US took the world leadership on that. So FCC was the first regulator in the world to mention and come up to the public saying, I want to allocate the entire 6 gigahertz band to Wi-Fi, to unlicensed technologies. And sharing with you, Greg, for me as a consumer, this makes a lot of sense. And I have access to a lot of data. I can share that, for example, here in Portugal, 90% of the internet traffic goes on a fixed network.
Right. Yep.
So when we know that the majority of the internet traffic, IP traffic, goes through the fixed networks, so the last mile of the majority of those fixed networks is Wi-Fi.
Right.
So makes sense overall for the competitiveness of a country, but as well the enterprises. Okay, if I need to improve my IP traffic, I'm having more demand for more digitalization. I need as well that extra capacity.
That makes sense.
So first is the spectrum. A second one is that started with Wi-Fi 6 is the ability of the Wi-Fi antennas to communicate with the devices. Until Wi-Fi 6, just to make it, let's say, super basic, the principle was I can only talk with one device at a time. So I'm the antenna. If I want to talk with one device, I just talk with that device, and all the other ones will be in standby. What happened with the new capabilities of Wi-Fi 6 and beyond, suddenly I can talk at the same time with multiple devices. So this is helping a lot somehow the latency that it shows up on the different applications.
Right. Absolutely.
And then,
right. So you're.
yeah,
Go ahead,
and
please.
then on third, Wi-Fi 7 is given one third benefit that for me it's quite relevant. That is, it allows you to use the free bands at the same time. So now I can talk to multiple devices, but on Wi-Fi 6 I could only use one piece of spectrum. Now
Right.
with Wi-Fi 7 I can use multiple at the same time. So I
Interesting.
have much more capabilities to, let's say, offload the data through whatever spectrum is available, that the device is going to receive the data package and somehow is going to receive faster all the information.
That's
So
fascinating. So almost like an SD-WAN for
yes,
Wi-Fi, and that you
yes,
can use multiple underlays, if you will, and pick the
correct.
best path. Yeah.
Correct. So
Very
I
interesting.
expect with this that latency and especially on latency, we'll see a huge improvement as we move to Wi-Fi 7 and all our devices in home, in our houses, in our offices, and the different industrial machines start to jump into Wi-Fi 7. I will see huge improvement on the latency.
Right. So on that point, I think the report goes into this a little bit, but where is, say, the enterprise world with changing to these new 6, 6E, and 7 Wi-Fi technologies? Is this just beginning, especially for Wi-Fi 7?
Yeah, I think it's just the beginning. And to be honest, Greg, has been super demanding for the enterprises. So if we look to that, what I said before, that normally the Wi-Fi, it follows like a 4 to 5 years wave. So we have a new standard every 4 to 5 years. Suddenly, we have free standards in 4 years. So we are putting a lot of pressure on the enterprises that, okay, you buy Wi-Fi 6, to improve the performance of your enterprise. Suddenly, I have Wi-Fi 6E, and then after another year, I have Wi-Fi 7. So I know that we are putting a lot of pressure on the enterprises to invest on Wi-Fi, but I think is delivering very strong capabilities and benefits.
Right, they have a lot of pressure on their end to have
Yes.
a much better connectivity. I mean, even just something that I bring up often, because it really has been a pain point for IT managers within the enterprise, is when folks did return to the office in some capacity, even if it's now and then. We've moved away from having handsets on the desk and anything like that, and half the other people are still home or remote. So you're constantly having this bandwidth push of having everyone on Teams and Google Meet and Zoom and whatnot. In addition to all kinds of other things that, as you mentioned at the top, the digital transformation in general. All the workloads of the enterprise have become digital, and that's just been a huge demand on. I look at it again from the sort of WAN side, but on the LAN side as well, right?
Definitely, and I can only say sorry to all the IT managers around there.
That's right. Yeah.
because is a very tough task for them, because even at
Mm.
security levels, privacy levels, now is not only the the enterprise LAN. Now they have to expand all that
Right.
into all these remote workers, and
Hmm.
what are the tools that they can use, how they can access different platforms. So it has been a super demanding transformation, but if I can bring a positive angle, I think
Hmm.
it's fantastic to see, and I think
Yeah.
being part of this transformation, everyone should be uh, super proud to see this evolution on the way that enterprises somehow become, uh, like you mentioned, so become more cloud centric,
Hmm.
virtual, and all the tools that need to be created to cope with that.
Yeah, and on the bandwidth demand side of that, I think another thing that we've seen is in the local access loop a big increase in capacity. Fiber to the premises or curb or whatever has really increased. Um, is Wi-Fi keeping up with that in terms of the ability to throughput those very large connections?
Uh, that's a super interesting discussion. In
Hmm.
fact, I had several conversations about it, and I'm super proud that the industry as a whole provided the 6 GHz band to Wi-Fi, because if that didn't happen at this moment, I think we could have the risk that the Wi-Fi in the future could become the weak point of that
Yeah, you don't want
connectivity
Wi-Fi to
channel.
be the bottleneck when you have this huge,
Exactly,
robust fiber
exactly.
network. Yeah.
So I think it's super important, and I think the regulators and the governments took that in consideration as well.
Hmm.
Fiber is
Hmm.
evolving a lot, the capacity, so we need as well the Wi-Fi to be able to evolve and be able to not to struggle that capacity. And that's where I think the 6 GHz it's super important,
Hmm.
because it
Hmm.
gives a lot of flexibility, can give uh, much faster speeds on top of all those techniques that I just mentioned before,
Right.
and gives a lot of flexibility for the IT managers to
Hmm.
tweak the networks and create wider channels to give faster speeds.
Right. Right. Well, and that also leads into another area that I end up talking about on the podcast a lot, and I wanted to ask you about as well, Tiago, which is network as a service. It's still a little bit, in my opinion, of it hasn't reached real commercial applications for most enterprises yet, but they are very often looking toward that, and how might this benefit me? And the one most obvious use case is when you have the kind of business where there's extremely bursty traffic. So I think you mentioned entertainment before, right?
Yeah.
That's a classic use case of a stadium or something where it's like some days there's 10 employees there, and some days there's 50,000 people all trying to stay connected, right? What role do you think Wi-Fi can play in facilitating that true kind of like network on demand that carriers are so excited to talk about for the future here?
No, first of all, I think it's a very strong trend. We have several members of the alliance that have been investing a lot of resources and time on NaaS services.
Hmm.
Is still a long way ahead, but the ability, let's put it this way, I think one of the key elements for the success of all these technologies is the ability to scale super fast and to adapt to different demands.
Hmm.
And we already start a lot of that transformation when we started to see on the Wi-Fi side, when we start to see all these SDN cloud-based
Right.
Wi-Fi infrastructures, that all the intelligence somehow is on the cloud, and I can augment capacity in one stadium, one hotel, or even one manufacturing campus super easily, remotely. Is almost just a question. I buy more licenses, and suddenly I can
Right.
have more equipment, might even more devices. Definitely, that will continue to progress. And those players that are able to combine that connectivity as a service combining with the network as a service, I think
Hmm.
they will have a lot of opportunities. So
Hmm. Hmm.
that for me is a very strong trend for the IT environment and network management.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting the way that you say that in a way, just be ready for extra licenses and things like that.
Yeah, yeah,
That's the challenge to overcome is this sort of like over for provisioned for the bursty times, but then not just sitting there being completely underutilized the rest of the time. I think that's what the whole NaaS business, even between data centers to some extent, is that's the struggle to overcome. Absolutely.
yeah, and all that, I think a key element is, like I said, the abilities to scale. How can I transform my
Hmm.
organization super fast and try to get all those small gains of efficiency that I can
Right.
have to have
That's
my
key.
products more competitive. So
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
still remember working with a manufacturing company in the UK, and they just said, Tiago, I want to reduce 1% the maintenance time of my machine. So I want
Hmm.
to super lean. So and we may think 1% is irrelevant, but for them 1% it counts for thousands or millions of dollars
Absolutely.
of
Yeah.
uh, manufacturing time of their campus.
Oh, that's those are the best improvements there. So it's
Yeah.
off topic, but there's a great book I read called Atomic Habits, and I'm a big cycling fan. They followed the Ineos cycling team, and that was their whole thing. It's like, hey, if we just keep very slight improvements, then and focusing on that rather than having this huge gain in efficiency that's not within reach, right? So
Yeah.
I think that very much applies to the whole NaaS world, is that that you have almost micro right sizing of your network and services, basically.
Greg, I love cycling as well.
Ah, no way! Great, yeah. Excellent. Well, we'll have a whole
off
conversation
off
about that,
topic.
but
Off
well,
topic.
yeah, offline we'll talk about Jumbo Visma and what's going to
Yeah,
happen
yeah, yeah.
next year.
It's
So,
my way. It's my way to escape from all the pressure on my day to day and
yeah,
all that.
likewise. Yeah.
Yeah,
So this time of year,
yeah,
I'm Zwifting a lot, but still, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
That's true. That's true.
yeah.
A lot of yeah in-house
Excellent. All right. Well,
cycling.
yeah, I always love to meet fellow cycling fans. So we'll have to connect on that. I'll have to get to
Correct.
a WBA event or something like this, right?
Yeah.
But all right. So before we leave enterprise, Tiago, I wanna hit on one more thing that I found really interesting in the report that I really wasn't familiar with, that you sort of alluded to was in part the raison d'etre of the WBA in the first place. But tell us about open roaming, kind of exactly what it is, how it works, and where you're moving with that.
Yeah, one of my favorite topics. And OpenRoaming came up as an idea to solve a problem that all of us we suffer, and enterprises suffer every day. That is how to onboard new devices easily. We as consumers, we see it every day going to a coffee shop, and then we go to another restaurant, and then to another coffee shop, and all different ways to connect to the network. Some of them completely open, no type of security. Some of
Hmm.
them they require a ton of personal information, your email, your mobile number, your full name, your address.
Hmm.
Some others you just share the same password with another 100 people.
Right.
Uh, and if you allow me to tell you a funny story, um,
Please.
I visit a lot of companies, and I went to visit one very large corporation in the US, and they invite me to go to their headquarters. All these fancy buildings, super modern. You have a facial recognition mechanism, so you need to onboard. You almost need to do the check-in the day before, so you need to send your passport and all that. So in such a way that when you go there for the meeting, there is a facial recognition. They open the door for you, and then you go to the elevator. You type the number of the meeting, and the elevator goes along immediately to the floor that you need to go. So all these super fantastic. And suddenly I go to the meeting and ask, "Oh, can I have the password for Wi-Fi? Can I connect to the Wi-Fi? I have a bunch of presentations." And they become a little bit nervous, and after a while they come up with these post-it papers with a funny password and said, "Oh, sorry, Tiago, this is what we have to give you the password." So this is just to demonstrate that is a pathetic problem that we have today on the enterprises. So you are going to receive a customer, you are going to receive a supplier, you are going to receive a partner. You should have a very easy way to onboard those devices into your network with security, with privacy, and that you feel confident. So you don't need somehow to create a bunch of rules on your security systems, on your LAN. Or I'm afraid that someone can play dirty if I give a password to that. So OpenRoaming at the end is a mechanism, is a standard that has been implemented by the majority of the Wi-Fi antennas manufacturers in such a way that if you have the right identity that in fact is based on the EIP technology, EIP technology. So if you have one ID, you are part of the Open Roaming Federation, you can go to any network that recognize that ID and you can attach automatically. And there is a public key infrastructure behind that gives that level of trust to all the entities that are providing IDs and all the entities that are providing the network. If I can do a comparison, is like the MasterCard or the Visa card. So we have all these banks that give you cards and you can go anywhere in the world, your card is going to be recognized. So the principle is the same. And what we do is we create a level of trust between the authentication servers of the different IDs and as well with the different Wi-Fi networks. And what we do is we guarantee that there is an interconnection between those type of entities. And when they come to a venue that has open roaming, their devices can attach automatically, and a dedicated and secure tunnel is done, so there is no harm to the local network. So all the traffic somehow is tunneled to the internet.
Yeah, that's fascinating, and kind of in a similar process or idea as on the network security side, having things like single sign-on, where multiple applications take the same, as long as you have multi-factor authentication set up and whatnot, and it can trust that, then you can utilize that. And gosh, that's really convenient for all of us as you know, sort of, you know, I'm sure, as you do, find myself in many different networks and that sort of thing often.
Yes.
So if you didn't have that sort of thing, it would be impossible to work as we do now, right? So.
Correct. And even for the enterprises, one interesting thing is they can even attach their enterprise ID that they use inside their offices to become outside the office an open roaming ID. So I can use my ID from my office and suddenly I go to an hotel, or I go to my customer facilities, or I go meet the supplier and suddenly I'm attached automatically to their network.
Right. Absolutely. Excellent. So Tiago, before we wrap up the interview here, I wanted to touch on a few just kind of more global issues outside of just the business of telecoms and enterprise connectivity and whatnot, and talk about kind of more the general sort of world economy. You know, a big issue across the world, one that I'm most familiar with in the U.S., of course, but all around the world I know is an issue, is just fulfilling the sort of digital divide, that it's very hard to get everybody in a society connected to the internet, and yet is absolutely crucial. I mean, obviously we saw during COVID time, but even after that into everyday life, that having access to the internet is incredibly important for economic development, for education, for all kinds of things. One of the things that is the biggest struggle with that is just the economics, right? The economics of laying wires everywhere, right? The least efficient economically segment of any network is the one that's going into your house or into your office or whatever the case may be, right? Do you see Wi-Fi as being able to play a role in sort of bridging that digital divide through municipal Wi-Fi or that sort of thing?
Yeah, first of all, digital divide is a huge problem that we all need to focus and try to bring all the ideas, all different options to try to solve it. I think Wi-Fi definitely can help. If we look into the wireless technologies, Wi-Fi is by far the cheapest technology to provide broadband connectivity.
Absolutely.
The majority of connected devices, they have a Wi-Fi chip. The availability is out there. We saw several examples of during the pandemic how students were going outside McDonald's. Even
Right.
McDonald's were closed, and they stop outside these retail shops and somehow just to get connected because they could not get connectivity at home. Um, I can say that I'm proud. I can say I'm proud to be part of different projects and contribute at least with my expertise to different municipalities across the world and
Absolutely.
even governments on how they can have a municipality Wi-Fi or a local government Wi-Fi infrastructure that they can help their constituents and their citizens. And even the economics that you mentioned is important, but another angle that for me it's very important is as well the IT skills. There is a huge part of the world population, even in developing countries, that they don't have the skills to be able to use the internet and use the different applications easily. So that's definitely an area to tackle. And just to mention OpenRoaming again, OpenRoaming can help a little bit there because it helps someone that has no IT skills. If you have OpenRoaming, whatever device that you have will attach automatically.
Right.
So
Right.
you don't
Seamless
need
connectivity. Right.
seamless connectivity. You don't need to look for the net SSID. What is this SSID? And then what is the password? So you just connect. But that's definitely a huge challenge that we in a digital society we need to tackle.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of that challenge, and this is a kind of topic that I often hit because I see it as so crucial for the next maybe even 10 years of development of all of this, is that even some people in the industry, but especially lay people, don't realize that spectrum is a limited resource, right? That it's like real estate. Your location
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
spectrum matters, and there's only so much spectrum before you get too much interference. We now have a couple of billionaires interested in using some of that spectrum for low Earth orbit satellites, and there's all kinds of sort of fights over who gets what piece of that spectrum. Some of it works better than other parts. One key thing that I see there is that we still have very legacy technologies. And by legacy, I mean sometimes more than 100 years old at this point, right? Like
yeah,
terrestrial
yeah,
radio, for example, and television that are using really choice pieces of that spectrum. Both you personally and as the WBA, is this something you are looking into to say, can we convince governments to release some of these legacy technologies that are on the best real estate, if you will? They have the coastal, sort of
yeah.
beautiful real estate that a lot of us would like to get our hands on.
Yeah, Greg, spot on. I don't like to say that we need to replace one thing with the other, but I advocate a lot to the regulators and the government bodies that we need to learn how to share.
Right.
More important than replace one with the other is, okay, in this precise location, what are the spectrum that I can use? So if I use this type of spectrum, am I somehow interfering with something else that is happening? And I can share with you, I talked a lot about the 6 gigahertz spectrum for the Wi-Fi. And by the way, that spectrum is not completely clean. So there is a bunch of services, satellite services, point-to-point fixed wireless links,
Right.
has been used for many players. So the way that we work with the regulators is, okay, so let's make sure that Wi-Fi can use this spectrum, but we don't interfere with anyone.
Right.
So let's imagine I'm in my office, and by the way, the next door I have a huge bank that they have a dedicated wireless link to transmit whatever information from the stock market or whatever they need to do, and I cannot interfere with that. Okay, so let's use a mechanism that can recognize, okay, on this precise location, I'm not going to use the full capability of the Wi-Fi, so I will use whatever is available without interfering with anyone.
Right.
And I think this basic principle, if we try to expand to other spectrum bands that make sense to do that sharing, I think it could be very useful for the, like you said, the spectrum is a limit. There is a limit for the spectrum use. So we need to be able to expand it without interfering with each other and being able to have all these different services that we need.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that I haven't often thought of it that way. If there's ways to sort of work into the same spectrum without interfering and still be able to achieve both of your uses, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and what happened in reality is, and I bring once more the case of the 6 gigahertz. The majority of the scenarios of the situations, we are not going to have any interferences. Let's be honest. So I'm here in my house. There is no radio links here, so I can have full capability of. Maybe I have a huge data center in a remote area, so there is no interferences at all there. So I can use full capabilities. But there are situations, and we need to understand that there are situations where I may have a huge constraint because, like I said before, I'm in Times Square, New York City.
Right.
Suddenly, I have all these fixed wireless links. I have all these point-to-point links between buildings and all that because it's super crowded environment. So on those scenarios, we need to safeguard that we are not harming anyone just because I want to have a better Wi-Fi.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Excellent. Well, Tiago, we hit a lot. I learned a lot. This has been really interesting. Thank you so much for doing that. Before we close out, just how can listeners keep up with you, keep up with what you're doing at the WBA?
Yeah. So anyone that want to follow me on LinkedIn, more than welcome. I accept everyone. I post the news about the WBA. If you want to know more, you can always visit our website, wballiance.com. But if you really want to get involved, you come to our events. So next event in US is in Dallas in June. So if you want to know more, we are more than welcome to join the community, be part of this group, and we can talk a lot about Wi-Fi and connectivity.
Yes, absolutely. And for me, I'll say if I ever get over to see some legs of the Vuelta a España, then I'll definitely look you up. We can go ride some together. Excellent.
If you come by the Iberian Peninsula, I'm more than happy to invite you for a bike ride and spending some time together.
Excellent. All right. Well, this has been a real pleasure, Tiago. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Greg. Fantastic. I love it. Thank you.
Great. All right. Cheers. Thanks for listening. Telegeography Explains the Internet comes from the experts here at Telegeography. It's edited and produced by Jane Miller, and it's hosted by me, Greg Bryan. And I also wrote that theme song you're listening to right now. To learn more about our data, jump over to telegeography.com, and we'll see you on the internet.